want to just talk about Bitcoin. All right, I cover the top portion of this. Russell, as I said, below the 20. Qs are below the 50, really critical. SPY, ES already broke structure. And so now we have Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin breaks, it's interesting. You've heard me do this before 1,000 times on, for technical analysis. When a stock is going, dropping like this, and when it drops and goes doink, like this, and then comes back up and closes here, and then the next day it opens around the same here. This level, even though it's just the wick of the candle, is actually support, because there is a reason why buyers came in here and pushed the price up yesterday. We know that it's falling. We know that it's breaking levels and breaking levels. At some point, each time it drops, it tries to find support. It tries to. Like, look at this. Look at this. Doink right there. Well, now that's support. And because this holds the next day or two, the next time it dumps, you've got support here. Don't worry. Look at this. Don't worry. You have support here. And then all of a sudden, so what was the level to break? Everybody see it? Well, first this, then this, which it did, boom, boom, boom. And then if you break through this, and it did yesterday, through the floor. So now what do you do? So now when you're looking at it, you got to look at this, because there's a good chance, like it does here, like it does everywhere, that from here you get buyers. And if the VIX drops and there's a couple of positive earnings reports, then boom, 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 and Bitcoin gets some risk on, which I don't think it will. Because if you look at Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Netflix, Meta, Tesla, if you look at these stocks, if they're dropping, NVIDIA, if they're dropping, and you could look at Google too, although that Google's the outlier because it's the strongest of all of them. If you see all of these dropping, that is called risk off. Investors are not willing to risk their money in the big plays here, because this is where, if you want to really bulldoze the market and put on risk and have the best return, big risk, big return, you put your money into big tech. That's where the money is. It's where the volume is. That's where the money is. And that's where the big boys go. And so that's called risk on. Well, guess what? So because there's high price volatility and big return, big risk, big return. Guess what? Bitcoin is exactly the same as far as being risk on. Big risk, big reward, big dollars. So they run together. So if investors and fund managers are not in risk on mode, they are risk off and dumping these, or certainly not into buying mode, they sure as shit aren't going to be buying this instead. They don't rotate out of Netflix into Bitcoin. They dump and they dump. The other thing about Bitcoin that makes it even more volatile is because it's leveraged. What do I mean by that? I mean that there are a lot of big investors that they buy, how do I explain it? They leverage Bitcoin in order to finance their positions in equities. And if they start losing money and if they get a margin call on equities and they have to raise cash, they will dump Bitcoin to raise the cash to cover their margin calls. And that's part of what you are seeing here. in addition to now it's risk off. When you combine those two, you have extreme volatility. And so when you break support, you look down to the next level, and now the next level is here. And so if you break, kind of where we are now, another 1,000, if this level here breaks, then you look at the next big fat round number or another support level. I don't see another support level. Have to go way back to find it. Let's see. Aha. Look at that. Well, what do you know? So there's no coincidence, ladies and gentlemen, that if you looked at, say, this level here where it bounced off of, let's draw a straight line and just see it if it hit anything. Sort of. Oops, I didn't really draw that very straight. Let's look at where we are now. Wow, huh? Do you see what I see? Not only are we at what I would call a major support level, boom, boom, boom. You are at a recent previous swing. Previous swing is yesterday, which just happens to align in with what's going on here and here. You break this level, Bitcoin will absolutely dump. If that happens, the market volatility surges. VIX over 20, SPY dumps down to 660. NVIDIA drops down to 170. The Russell will then revisit that 247, 245 to 248 range. Remember that? It'll revisit that. So this is what we're looking at. And that's why I don't just look at one chart, one indicator. It's a group. That's why this is such an intense grid here. Even if you're brand new, you might not all understand all of this. And believe me, it's covered in all of the videos as you get through them. But can you start to see it? Does it start to make sense for those of you that are new, those of you that have been around me for a little while now? Do you start to see the method of my madness? Dollar going up because it's being rescued. This is not a good thing about the dollar. In fact, the dollar rising like this, although it needs to be rescued, is not necessarily good for equities. Why? Because as the dollar strengthens, other currencies weaken. And as other currencies weaken, they can't get enough of their currency for the US dollar, which means they might slow down in their purchasing of our products, which means our exports suffer when the dollar rises. That is known by fund managers, and they built algos around the dollar. So as the dollar rises like this, they have algos that sell off equities because they know these companies are going to suffer if the dollar goes up. So you have algos that are selling. That's number one. Number two, when this starts to happen and the VIX rises because there's fear, there's algos programmed here at these levels of the VIX. As it goes higher and higher, algos trigger what? Sell programs, specifically on the big tech stocks. Big tech stocks go down, Bitcoin goes down, other equities in the markets go down. You now have what's known as a correction. And that's the phase of the market that we're in.
Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video from Trade With Me Now. Make sure to go ahead and like this video and subscribe to our channel so you make sure that you catch our next video right when it's released. Also, if you have a question or comment, please leave that in the comments section below. And of course, if you want to learn more about Trade With Me Now or join our community of profitable traders, go to tradewithmenow.com. There's also a link in the description below.